There can be numerous reasons for someone in Arizona to have their wages being garnished, but do you have any options to stop it? Well, depending on your situation, having your wages garnished could put you in a financial hardship. For example, if someone makes Arizona's minimum wage of $12.80 an hour, and now they have their wages being garnished for a $25,000 unpaid debt, that could potentially put them in a hardship where now they're considering filing bankruptcy. All of that to say though, we're going to cover all of that and more, so let's get into it. Welcome to the Ascend Finance YouTube channel, where we cover wage garnishment in Arizona and help folks understand their options to resolve it. With that said though, everyone's situation is unique. So we built a free Arizona wage garnishment calculator to help folks see what their options are, compare the pros and cons to each option, and estimate the cost based on their personalized data. My name is Justin and I'm one of the analysts here at Ascend. I speak with quite a few folks who are unfortunately facing a garnishment, so I'd love to help you understand the process and options. In today's video, we're going to cover a few things. First being the options to stop a garnishment. Second, I want to go through the Arizona wage garnishment laws. Third, I want to touch on wage garnishment process in Arizona. Then I want to go through what the steps could look like to finding out who could be the one garnishing your wages. And then finally, I want to help you understand which option may make most sense for you. Before I dive into the different ways to stop a garnishment in Arizona, I wanted to say that if this video ends up being helpful, feel free to leave a like, as it's always encouraging for us to see. Also, if you'd like to see more videos like this covering wage garnishment and options to resolve debt in Arizona, feel free to subscribe, as we try to put out new videos weekly. Now, let's get right into it. So we understand that you may be feeling overwhelmed. And at this point, probably one of the most important things is understanding, how do I stop this garnishment? Well, I understand it can be debilitating. And so we built an Arizona wage garnishment calculator to help you understand either A, how much you may be garnished, as sometimes folks get something in the mail, or they're served, or now they're notified by their employer that you may start have a garnishment soon. So we want to help you understand what that could look like. Also, the other thing is, if you're currently already being garnished, we want to make sure that that's the correct amount. And so you can take our calculator and that'll help you determine whether the correct amount is being pulled out of your paycheck. Also on the calculator to show you the options to stop a garnishment. Now, with that said, when it comes to stopping a garnishment, there are unfortunately only a few ways to do so, as at this point, the court's already issued an order for the unpaid debt. However, there are options. So let's dive into those now. First, filing bankruptcy. So one option to stop a garnishment is filing a bankruptcy. There is the liquidation bankruptcy, known as Chapter 7, which can potentially provide immediate relief from a garnishment and potentially any other unsecured debt that you may have. However, in order to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Arizona, you do need to pass the means test. And so there are income requirements based on your household size. And so I'm going to put that on the screen now to help you see what the current income limits are for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Arizona. And so as you can see, based on the number of people in your household, the larger the number, the larger the income threshold. So for a household of 5, it's about $106K versus a household of 1, just under $60,000. And so for more up-to-date figures though, on the means test, and also for you to estimate whether you qualify, you can take our free Chapter 7 calculator. The calculator will estimate whether you are able to qualify for a Chapter 7, what the cost looks like based on your zip code and personalized data. You don't even need to put an email address to see your results. We want it to be as frictionless as possible. Now, with all that to say, the Chapter 7 filing fee in Arizona is $338. But you may be entitled to have it waived if you're under the fee poverty guidelines. I'm going to put on the screen now. Same thing, you can see the number of household or the size of the household versus the income threshold. And if you're below it, you may be able to get the fee waived. Now, if it doesn't make sense to file bankruptcy, or you want to try another option first, you could potentially try to file an exemption through the court. With this, you could potentially try to reach out to the local courthouse to see if you may be eligible for any exemptions. For example, you may be able to file a head of household exemption, which could potentially limit how much they're able to withhold from your paycheck. Now, I want to go through now the Arizona wage garnishment laws. In Arizona, there should be a limit on the amount of earnings that can be withheld from a single paycheck. Depending on the state, it's generally just based on disposable earnings. Now, I'm going to put in the description what the wage garnishment law is specifically for Arizona. That way you can have it in front of you, even link an article so you can see it all there. So now that we've covered the garnishment laws in Arizona and I've pointed you at least in the right direction, I want to help you understand the process and steps behind it all. Now, when it comes to a wage garnishment, the actual process of it really depends on the type of debt actually being collected, as there's actually potentially specific procedures procedures for garnishing someone's wages for, child support or spousal support, virtually compared to maybe like credit card debt. So with that all said, though, the process is generally similar across the board for collecting unpaid unsecured debt. So let's kind of get into what the process looks like for reaching at, a wage garnishment for something like that. Now, the first thing they're going to have to do is most likely obtain a judgment against you. And so wage garnishments don't happen overnight, right? And so fortunately, there are checks and balances put in place to protect both the debtor and the creditor from doing anything with ill intent. So if you are facing a garnishment from, let's say, the federal government, maybe for like an unpaid student debt, the process may look a bit different, as they may not need to actually have a court order to withhold your earnings, but nevertheless, let's focus on, regular traditional unsecured debt. So the first step to obtaining a judgment is through a debt collection lawsuit. So the creditor will need to properly serve you for any unpaid unsecured debt. So that's going to probably include credit cards, medical bills, and personal loans, payday loans, of course, and things of that nature. So once you've received the summons, you should see a few things. First, the facts of the case, right? And so you should see a summary of the law, the description of the debt, and the exact amount that you owe. And so most times you should actually have about 30 days to respond, but it should state what that is on the summons. Now, let's say, the creditor has enough documentation to provide sufficient proof, right? And so they have enough proof that you owe the debt. The court now may issue a default judgment. So with the judgment, though, the creditor now has the choice to whether they want to pursue further legal action by maybe requesting a wage garnishment order. So that is the next step here in the process, is actually obtaining a wage garnishment order. So now that we've actually touched on what it looks like to obtain a judgment, I want to kind of go through what the next step of it looks like and kind of what it looks like to obtain a wage garnishment order. So as I just alluded to, with the judgment, the creditor is now able to potentially request a wage garnishment order. So here's what that looks like. The first thing is the creditor is going to request a writ of execution from the court. The next thing is there's going to be a garnishment packet served to your employer. Now, once the employer has received the garnishment packet, you may actually start to see your wages being garnished. Probably, in the first paycheck you've received 10 days after the service. So once your employer has received the garnishment packet, you may actually start to see your wages being garnished in the first paycheck you receive. That's about 10 days after the date of being served. And so your employer may need to provide you with a copy of the garnishment order. And so you should be able to challenge this order, but you may only have around 10 days to ask for any potential exemptions. Now, sometimes folks are not even aware that they are being garnished, who's garnishing, or what the balance is for, and for many, many reasons, unfortunately. So before I go too much further, I want to help you figure out where to go if you either don't know who's garnished your wages or you're not sure the balance they're garnishing you for. I've actually spoken with more and more folks who have unfortunately been caught off guard by a recent garnishment from their wages. Most times they're first hearing about it from being notified by their employer, or they just noticed a portion of their paycheck was being taken out. And so if you do fall into this category, I want to help you understand a few simple steps that may help you actually answer those questions and get a little bit more understanding. Of course, if you already know who's garnishing your wages and the total balance, feel free to skip to the next part here, more covering your options to resolve it as well that I touched on earlier. But if you don't know who's garnishing your wages or what the balance is, here are some steps to take if you need more information. So one step could be, it's depending on everyone's situation, but one step could be reaching out to payroll and seeing if they have any information on who submitted the garnishment order. Most likely them or someone within your employer has information or the documents that they were served. Now, once you know who is garnishing your wages, you should be able to call them directly to get the information on the balance. So once you have an idea of the law firm that's handling the account, you could potentially reach out to them and get an idea of the balance, when it started, how much they want, if there's any offers to resolve. Or if that doesn't work for any reason, you could potentially reach out to the courthouse and see if they're able to look up your case. If you call the local courthouse, they may have the case information regarding the judgment and the garnishment issued. Of course, there's no promises on any of these, but those could be options to explore. Now, if both of those options don't work, you may be able to check your credit report and see if there's any outstanding debts that it may be in relation to. So if you have a medical bill from 4 years ago that is in collections and you haven't paid on it and your wages are being garnished and you look in the credit report and you see there's a medical bill in collections, well, It could be that, but those are things to check out. Now, the multiple question here is, which options should you do? Now, with all that to say, ultimately it's up to you. However, I would encourage you to take our wage garnishment calculator, as that'll help you compare your options, the cost, the pros and cons to handling a potential garnishment. As I do understand that it can be overwhelming, you're always welcome to give us a call or text at 833-272-3631, and we'd be happy to chat through your situation. I do hope that this video was helpful, but if you do have any questions at all, feel free to leave a comment down below, as I am sure there are others with a similar question. We will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. However, thanks so much for watching, and I'm always here if you have any questions.